The royal hall of the Val'kath Empire trembled with silence. Golden pillars rose high into the dark ceiling, shining faintly in the light of burning skies outside. The smell of smoke and melted metal seeped through the open balcony windows. The alien princes stood together, each one frozen, their proud faces pale with disbelief. Only hours ago, the Val'kath had been celebrating another easy victory. Their empire ruled half the stars in this sector. Civilizations bowed before them. Even the mention of their name made weaker species tremble, and yet now their war fleets were gone. Prince Kareth, the youngest of the royal bloodline, stared at the holographic screen in front of him. It showed the outer defense line of their system, thousands of ships burning and broken. The glowing symbols that marked Val'kath vessels were disappearing one by one, fading like dying embers. His voice was a whisper. That can't be right. That was only one human fleet. The older prince beside him, Varen, slammed his armored hand onto the table. It was not a fleet, scouts. That's what the report said. Just a scout division. His voice echoed through the chamber. The guards at the door looked away. Even they knew what that meant. Scout division. A small recon force. Barely a fraction of an army. A test group sent ahead to study enemy space. If this tiny human force could destroy an entire Val'kath defense line, what could their full army do? The princes gathered around the main war display. A trembling officer adjusted the controls. The holographic projection changed, showing the timeline of the battle. At first, the alien icons outnumbered the humans 10-1. The human ships were smaller, older, and fewer. Easy targets. Or so the Val'kath had thought. But the battle footage told another story. The humans didn't run. They didn't even slow down. Their formation was tight, perfect, like a single living machine. And when they fired, their weapons cut through Val'kath shields as if they were made of glass. One blast. One human ship. A Val'kath cruiser gone. Prince Varen's jaw tightened. How? How can their weapons pierce our shields? The officer swallowed hard. Unknown, my lord. Their energy signatures don't match anything in our database. It's like they're bending physics itself. Kareth leaned closer to the projection, eyes fixed on the glowing white trails of human ships. Look at how they move. That's not panic, that's precision. He saw it, the pattern. Every human movement had purpose. Every rotation, every shot. It was like watching a dance made of death. The Val'kath fleet had opened fire first. Confident, arrogant. The humans hadn't even responded until the Val'kath flagship approached within range. Then everything changed. A white flash, a single shot, and the flagship gone. The silence in the hall deepened. The nobles in the back started to murmur, fear creeping into their proud voices. Impossible. No ship should have that kind of power. They said humans were primitive. Kareth turned to the general of the royal guard. General, confirm again. That was truly a scout division. The general bowed his head. Yes, my prince. The intercepted transmission was clear. They called themselves Scout Division 7 Saul Defense Command. Only 72 ships total. The hall erupted in disbelief. 72? They faced 3,000 of ours.
This must be false data.
But it wasn't false. Outside the palace walls, the sky glowed red with falling debris, pieces of their own ships. The hum of the palace shields trembled as shockwaves from distant explosions reached the capital. Prince Varen growled. They can't have that kind of strength. They're humans, upstarts from the outer spiral. Their world isn't even fully colonized. But even as he spoke, he knew it was useless anger. The data didn't lie. Another hologram flickered to life. A human broadcast intercepted moments before the signal cut. A calm female voice spoke through the static. Scout Division 7 reporting. Enemy resistance neutralized. Minimal losses. Requesting new orders from Saul Command. The voice was soft. Calm, not excited. Not proud, just routine. Like she had just completed a simple task. Kareth felt a chill crawl down his back. He turned to Varen slowly. They don't even see us as a threat. Varen stared at the floor. No one dared to speak. Outside the royal city, fires burned where debris had fallen. Across the empire, panic spread through military outposts. Some stations went dark without warning. Their signals vanished just like the ships before them. In one of the lower towers, a group of officers tried to contact the remaining fleet. Command Vessel Tirith, respond. Scout Group 3, do you copy? Anyone? Only silence answered. Kareth watched through the balcony window as another flash tore across the horizon. It was far away, but bright enough to turn the entire palace gold for a heartbeat. Another ship, whispered one of the guards. That was the Ravager-class dreadnought. One of our best. Gone. Just like that. The eldest Prince Varen finally spoke in a low voice. They are testing us. That's what this is. They came to see how we fight. Kareth nodded slowly. Then we've shown them everything. The realization hit the entire hall at once. Every eye turned to the holographic map. The empty void where their fleets once were. The humans now knew their tactics, their defenses, their weaknesses. The Val'kath, proud conquerors of 1,000 worlds, had just become someone else's experiment. A whisper filled the hall. No one knew who said it first. If this was their scout division, what will their armies be like? The princes stood together, gazing into the burning sky. None of them had an answer. The silence was heavier than any explosion. And in that silence, a quiet truth settled deep into every alien heart. The age of Val'kath supremacy was over. The age of humans had just begun. Before the fires, before the silence, before the ruin, there had been laughter. The Royal War Council of the Val'kath Empire was filled with it. The sound of polished armor, the echo of pride, the scent of power. All of it mixed beneath the high crystal ceiling of the strategy chamber. The princes stood tall before a giant holographic map of their borders. Dozens of red symbols marked the alien territories they had already conquered. Blue icons flickered on the outer rim, new worlds waiting to be taken. And somewhere near the edge of that map, a small yellow light blinked. That light represented a single human scout fleet. Prince Varen smirked, his golden armor shining in the room's dim light. They call themselves the United Terran Command, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. A young species playing soldier in our galaxy. Laughter rippled across the chamber. The older nobles found it amusing that the humans dared to send ships near Val'kath space. They called humans metal scavengers, barely space-worthy, and the hairless vermin of Saul. The youngest prince, Kareth, did not laugh. He watched the small yellow light blinking on the map and felt a strange unease. Still, he said quietly, they've expanded quickly, faster than most species. They adapt fast. Varen waved his hand dismissively. And they'll die fast too. Their technology is crude. Their numbers are small. They are explorers, not warriors. The Empire will crush them like dust. The court applauded his words. The sound echoed like thunder. At the edge of the room, one of the admirals and an old strategist named Raltor cleared his throat. His scales shimmered dark blue in the light. My princes, he began carefully. The humans have fought other species before. They've never been conquered. Perhaps we should— Silence, old one, Varen interrupted. You think we should fear apes from a single star? The admiral bowed deeply and said no more. But Kareth caught a flicker of worry in the old man's eyes. That night the Val'kath High Fleet assembled. 3 armadas, over 3,000 ships, prepared for what was expected to be a short punishment strike. It was meant to be an example. A message, a reminder to the galaxy that the Val'kath still ruled the stars. Each ship gleamed with silver and gold. Rows of massive cannons lined their hulls. The flagship alone carried a crew of 40,000. They were proud, fearless, and arrogant. In their minds, the humans were just another primitive race that had risen too fast. And like all the others before them, they would be erased. As the fleets prepared to depart, Prince Kareth stood by the main hangar window, watching the engines flare. They look beautiful, whispered a young officer beside him. The humans won't stand a chance. Kareth nodded slowly. Maybe not. But beauty can die fast in war. The officer didn't understand. Few did. The journey to the border was short. Within days, the Val'kath fleets reached the human patrol zone, a dark region of space near a yellow sun. Scanners detected 72 human ships, small, compact, heavily armored. Varen leaned back in his command throne aboard the flagship. 72, he said, amused. They didn't even bring a full formation. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. Warriors of the Val'kath, before us lies a human scouting group that dares to enter our stars. Let this battle remind the galaxy who rules the void. Cheers erupted across the comms. Drums of war echoed through the halls. Pilots roared in excitement as battle banners unfurled on every screen. The humans remained silent. Not one transmission. Not one hail. Their ships simply moved into formation, tight, precise, and symmetrical. The Val'kath fleet advanced confidently. Their formation is defensive, one officer noted. Good, said Varen. It means they're afraid. When the distance closed to attack range, the Val'kath opened fire. Thousands of plasma rounds lit up the void, painting it in red and gold. The first volley hit. Explosions flashed across human hulls. But as the light faded, the humans still stood, their shields held. Completely. The second volley came. Then a third. Still nothing. Confusion spread through the alien bridge crew. Their armor, it's not cracking, shouted an engineer. Varen scowled. Increase power.
Keep firing!
And then suddenly, the humans moved. Their formation shifted into a wedge. Their ships aligned in a perfect spear shape, glowing faintly blue. No comms, no threats, just silent motion. A bright pulse spread from their center ship, followed by a series of blinding white flashes. Then, silence. The Val'kath sensors went dark for 2 full seconds. When they came back online, half of their front line was gone. On the flagship bridge, chaos erupted. We lost contact with the Draven and Kethra wings. Shields are collapsing. Their energy weapons, it's rewriting our field equations. Varen's voice rose over the panic. Keep firing. Regain formation. But it was too late. The human ships cut through them like blades through mist. One Val'kath cruiser exploded silently, scattering molten fragments into the dark. Another was torn in half by an invisible force. Kareth, watching from his own ship at the rear, couldn't believe what he saw. They're not just firing blindly, he whispered. They're predicting us. Every human strike hit at the perfect moment, when shields flickered, when engines turned, when armor was exposed. They knew exactly where to hit. As his ship shook from a distant blast, Kareth's stomach turned cold. This wasn't war. This was precision testing. Hours later, as the shattered remains of the Val'kath fleets drifted in silence, a single message broke through the static. A calm human voice, clear and direct. Scout Division 7 reporting. Enemy resistance neutralized. Requesting permission to proceed deeper. Varen froze in disbelief. Scout Division? He repeated softly. Kareth whispered. That was no army. No one spoke after that. The laughter of earlier days had turned to silence. The arrogance that filled their empire was gone. They had attacked a scout division and lost an empire in a single night. Kareth stood at the bridge window, eyes fixed on the stars. The human ships were already leaving, their engines glowing like distant ghosts. No message of victory, no demand for surrender, just calm departure. He exhaled slowly, whispering to himself, They didn't fight us to win. They fought us to measure us. Behind him, the alarm still blinked red. Around him, the silence of defeat echoed louder than any explosion. And far away, somewhere beyond the stars, humanity was already watching and preparing. Space had never been so quiet. The debris field stretched for hundreds of kilometers, twisted remains of the Val'kath fleet drifting without sound. Fragments of gold armor, broken hulls, and silent escape pods floated in the endless black. The stars shone cold and distant, reflecting off the shattered metal like tears of light. Prince Kareth stood on the bridge of his battered cruiser, staring at the destruction through the wide viewing window. Hours ago, the Val'kath Empire had commanded the largest fleet in this region of space. Now that fleet was gone. Status of the survivors? He asked softly. The comms officer's voice shook. Minimal, my prince. Most of the outer wings are destroyed. Only a handful of ships are still transmitting. But their signals are fading. Kareth clenched his hands behind his back. The silence was almost worse than the battle. It felt like the humans had vanished into the void after finishing their work. No pursuit, no taunting, no sign of victory. Just absence. He turned to his second officer. Where are they now? Unknown, my prince. The human ships disappeared from sensors. Their energy trails are scrambled. We can't track them. Kareth's voice was calm, but his mind raced. How could a small human scout group erase an entire armada and then simply vanish? He felt something deeper than fear. It was confusion mixed with awe. On the other side of the battlefield, aboard the UTS Horizon, Captain Mira Solon watched her crew quietly run post-battle scans. Her ship was one of 72, the entirety of Scout Division 7. Around her, the human formation was perfectly ordered, moving as if the battle had been a mere training exercise. The bridge was calm. The crew spoke in quiet tones, their motions precise. "Target fleet neutralized," reported the tactical officer. "No further hostile activity detected. Any survivors?" Mira asked. "A few signals, unarmed." "Shall we engage?" Mira shook her head slowly. "No, let them live. They need to understand." Her voice was steady, emotionless. Not anger, not cruelty, only a quiet purpose. The human ships glided silently between wreckage fields, scanning the alien remains. Drones floated out, collecting fragments of Val'kath armor and debris. Every scan, every recording, every movement, all of it was data. Humanity didn't fight blindly. They learned. On the horizon's main screen, streams of data scrolled past. Shield frequencies, plasma signatures, reaction speeds. The humans were studying everything the Val'kath had shown them. "Upload complete," the officer said. "Saul Command will have the full report in 20 minutes. Captain Mira nodded. "Good. Mission parameters remain unchanged. No pursuit. No further contact." "We return to neutral space," her words carried no triumph. For her, this wasn't victory. It was observation. Meanwhile, back in the ruined Val'kath command network, panic spread like wildfire. Across multiple colonies, transmissions screamed for reinforcement, but there were none to send. Their admirals, once proud and loud, now whispered in disbelief. "We fired first," one muttered in shame. "We called them weak. Scout Division. What does that mean?" If that was only reconnaissance, the truth began to sink in. The humans hadn't sent an army. They hadn't even sent soldiers. They had sent observers, scientists with guns. Kareth watched the data feed from his failing scanners. He could still see faint outlines of the human ships moving gracefully through the wreckage. There was something disturbingly calm about them. They didn't chase. They didn't celebrate. They were professionals. "They're not fighting for glory," Kareth whispered. "They're fighting to understand." No one answered him. Hours passed. The surviving Val'kath ships gathered near a dying moon, their engines flickering. Kareth opened a communication line with his older brother, Prince Varen, whose flagship had survived but was heavily damaged. Varen's face appeared on the screen, smoke rising behind him, his armor blackened. His expression was blank, almost hollow. "Report," Kareth said. "Report?" Varen laughed bitterly. "There is no report. There is nothing left. They destroyed everything in less than an hour." He leaned closer to the camera. His eyes were red with fury. "Do you understand what they are, brother? Those were not warriors. They were machines in human skin. No fear, no emotion, just efficiency." Kareth's voice lowered. "Did you hear their transmission?" "Yes, Scout Division 7 reporting." Both princes went silent. Varen finally spoke again. "If that was their scouting force, then what happens when they send their battle fleet?" Kareth looked away, out the window to where the last pieces of the Val'kath ships burned in the black. "Then the galaxy will finally know what humans are capable of." In the distance, a faint blue light appeared. The Horizon and her sister ships aligned into jump formation. As the countdown began, the human fleet shimmered, their hulls glowing with soft energy, reflecting like stars. To the few surviving Val'kath who still watched from their crippled ships, it was like watching ghosts fade away, and then they were gone, no noise, no trace. Just empty space and the quiet hum of radiation from burning debris. In the royal palace on Val'kath Prime, chaos ruled. Reports flooded the war hall. Every word carried disbelief. 3 armadas gone. No survivors confirmed beyond the princes. Human losses, minimal. The nobles screamed at one another. Some demanded vengeance. Others demanded surrender. None had answers. At the center of the storm, Kareth stood silently before the main screen, replaying the battle over and over again. Each time he watched it, he saw more. The precision of the human strikes, the unity of their movement, the total control of every second. They had studied Val'kath ships, tactics, formation, and adapted instantly. It wasn't just strength. It was intelligence. They fought like a single mind spread across 72 ships. Not 72 captains, but one command. One thought, Kareth finally turned to the council. "You do not understand," he said quietly. "This was not a defeat. This was a message." "A message?" One noble spat. "They killed thousands!" "Yes," Kareth said. "And they did it gently." The room fell silent. "If they wanted us gone," Kareth continued, "they would have wiped the entire system clean. They didn't. They stopped when they proved their point." Far away, aboard the horizon, Captain Mira sent one last encrypted message to Saul Command. "Test results complete. Target species and highly aggressive. Recommendation, observation only. No escalation required at this time." Her hand hovered over the console before she closed the transmission. "Let them think they survived," she said softly. "That fear will teach them more than war ever could." The human ships turned, fading into the dark between stars. Back in the shattered empire, the Val'kath watched the void in silence, and for the first time in generations they prayed. The palace of the Val'kath Empire had never been so silent. The twin suns of their world hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the royal city. Black smoke rose from the spaceports, where damaged ships limped home, engines sparking, hulls torn apart, carrying the broken remains of what was once the strongest fleet in the quadrant. Inside the grand war hall, the princes gathered once more. But this time there was no laughter, no music, no sound of celebration, only the echo of boots and the faint hum of the holographic table showing the disaster that had unfolded. Prince Varen stood at the center, his armor scorched and cracked. His face, once proud and sharp, and now looked older, tired. 3,000 ships, he said quietly. 3,000? Gone. His words hung in the air like smoke. No one dared to reply. "And the humans?" he asked, turning to the War Council. A general bowed deeply. His scales had lost their color from exhaustion. "They'd left, my prince. They did not pursue. Their ships disappeared from all sensors. We believe they jumped to hyperspace." "They left?" Varen repeated, his voice rising slightly. "They destroy an empire's fleet and leave?" Prince Kareth, standing near the back, spoke for the first time. "Because they didn't come to conquer. They came to test us." Heads turned toward him. Even Varen's eyes narrowed. "Test us?" Kareth walked forward slowly, each step echoing in the silent hall. "Think about it, brother. They had us surrounded. They could have wiped out every ship, every planet in range. But they didn't. They stopped when we broke." He paused, staring at the shattered holographic projection of their fleet. "They wanted to see how we would fight, how we would think, how fast we would fall." A long silence followed. The council members looked at one another, whispering in disbelief. "That's madness," one noble hissed. "Why would anyone test another empire like that?" "Because they can," Kareth said simply. Outside the palace, panic spread across the capital. Crowds filled the streets demanding answers. The once proud soldiers of the Val'kath marched quietly through the squares, their banners folded, their armor dented. Families of the fallen filled the temples, lighting blue candles that burned against the rising night. For the first time in centuries, the Val'kath were afraid. The Empire had always believed itself invincible, that its armies were the standard of the galaxy. But now whispers filled every corridor and market. The humans came. They destroyed the fleets. They were only scouts. Children cried when they heard the word, Saul. Merchants closed early. Even the priests spoke softly during prayer. In the council chamber, Varen slammed his fist onto the table. "Enough of this fear. We are the Val'kath. We do not kneel to primitives." But his voice cracked as he said it. Kareth met his brother's eyes. "Then what do you suggest? Fight them again? With what ships? With what courage?" Varen glared at him. "You speak like one of them." Kareth stepped closer. "I speak like someone who wants to survive." The room fell quiet again. The old Admiral Raltor, who had warned them before the battle, finally spoke. His voice was thin but steady. "My princes, I have studied their patterns. Their tactics were too perfect, too controlled. They were not improvising. They knew exactly what we would do." Varen frowned. "You mean they predicted us?" "Yes," the Admiral said. "It's as if they had fought us 1,000 times before inside their minds. Inside their machines and long before they met us in battle." A cold shiver ran through the hall. Later that night, Kareth walked alone through the ruins of the capital's space yard. Massive hangars lay in silence, filled with the wreckage of returning ships. He stepped through corridors that smelled of burned metal and smoke. Everywhere he looked, he saw failure, his empire's pride lying in pieces. At the far end of the hangar, he found a surviving pilot sitting beside his damaged fighter, staring blankly at the floor. "You were there," Kareth said softly. The pilot looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. His voice was hoarse. "Yes, my prince. I saw them." "Tell me." The pilot took a long breath. "They didn't speak. They didn't scream. They didn't even try to scare us. They just moved. Their ships glowed white. Not fire, not plasma, something else. We fired everything we had. Nothing touched them." He looked at his hands. They were shaking. It wasn't war. It was like they were cleaning the sky. Kareth felt a chill in his chest. He placed a hand on the pilot's shoulder. "You've done enough. Rest." As he turned to leave, the pilot whispered almost to himself, "They didn't hate us. And that's what makes it worse." Back in the palace, a new signal arrived. The communications officer ran through the hall, trembling. "My princes!" A message from the humans. Everyone froze. Varen snatched the data tablet from the officer's hands. The screen flickered, then stabilized. A human face appeared, a calm, composed, wearing a simple uniform. The background was dark, the voice steady. "This is Captain Mira Solon of Scout Division 7, Saul Defense Command. We came in peace. You fired first. Consider this engagement concluded. Do not pursue." The message ended. No threats, no demands, just silence. Varen stared at the screen, unable to speak. Kareth finally said, "They're warning us." "Warning?" Varen whispered. "That's mercy." No one in the room disagreed. That night, Kareth returned to the highest tower of the palace. From there, he could see the stars clearly, bright and endless. Somewhere among them, humanity was out there, watching, waiting. He thought about the message, about the way the human captain had spoken. Calm, confident, utterly in control. They hadn't needed anger. Power didn't need to shout. Below him, the lights of the city flickered weakly. The Empire's pride was fading, replaced by quiet fear. "They could have ended us," Kareth whispered to the stars. But they didn't. Why? There was no answer. Only the distant hum of space. He turned to the horizon where the twin suns had set behind the Black Hills. "If those were their scouts," he said softly, "then what will come next?" And far beyond the edge of Val'kath space aboard the UTS Horizon, Captain Mira Solon stood before her window, watching the stars drift by. She whispered to herself, "Phase 1 complete. Now we see who learns faster, them or us." The stars reflected in her eyes like a million watching gods. And the void remained silent, waiting for the next move. Days passed since the human scout fleet vanished, but the silence they left behind was heavier than war itself. Across the Val'kath Empire, fear had become law. Entire star systems stopped communicating. Ships refused to leave port. Captains whispered that space itself had turned against them. In the royal palace, Prince Varen stood beside the great viewing window, watching the planet's defense satellites orbiting in distant rings of blue light. His reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, uncertain. "They disappeared," he murmured. "And yet every shadow feels like them." Kareth entered quietly behind him. His brother looked worse than before. His armor now replaced by a plain officer's coat, no medals, no pride. "The council is in chaos," Kareth said. "Half of them want to sue for peace. The rest want to hide behind the moons." Varen gave a bitter laugh. "Peace? How do we offer peace to ghosts?" Later that evening, the council chamber was filled with argument. The nobles shouted, the admirals accused each other, and panic trembled through every voice. "We must rebuild the fleet," one shouted. "With what resources?" Another barked. "We need to send a probe to Saul." Someone else cried. "Are you mad?" "That's suicide!" Kareth raised his hand, but no one listened. Then suddenly the room went dark. The holographic displays flickered and died. The counselors froze mid-sentence. Then a single symbol appeared in the air. A golden sun with 12 rays glowing bright against the darkness. A soft hum filled the air, followed by a calm, human voice. "This is a priority transmission from Saul Defense Command." Every prince, general, and noble went silent. The image shifted, revealing the same woman they had seen before. Captain Mira Solon. She stood before a deep blue backdrop, wearing a simple uniform marked only with a sun emblem. Her face was steady, her tone controlled. "To the Val'kath Empire," she began. "We acknowledge your losses. We regret that contact was made through violence. However, the engagement was initiated by your forces. Saul will not pursue retribution." A murmur ran through the council. Some whispered relief, others confusion. The message continued. "The division you encountered was a scout unit, assigned to map the outer sectors of your claimed space. We have withdrawn to prevent escalation. We will not cross your borders unless provoked again." There was a pause, then her voice hardened slightly. "But understand this, humanity does not seek war. We seek understanding. Yet we will not allow ourselves to be treated as lesser beings. Should you threaten Saul or any of its allied colonies again, the response will not be measured." The room grew colder with every word. "We offer peace through respect. Learn from this encounter. Do not repeat it." The screen faded, leaving behind the golden sun symbol once more. Then the transmission ended. For a long time, no one spoke. The room felt like a tomb. Finally, Varen whispered, "That was their warning." Admiral Raltor nodded slowly. "No, my prince. That was their mercy." Kareth stepped closer to the holo projector, staring at the now blank space. She said, "Scout unit, that means there are more." "More?" One noble scoffed. "You think they have armies stronger than that?" Kareth turned to him sharply. "They destroyed 3,000 ships with less than 100. If that was their smallest force, then yes, I think they have more." The noble fell silent. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, every major empire in the quadrant had heard of the message from Saul. The Car Dominion began pulling fleets back from the border. The Sarathi coalition closed its wormholes. Even the mighty Zira Combine, known for conquering entire planets without mercy, suddenly declared neutrality. Every power feared the same thing. If this was what humanity's scouts could do, what would their armies be like? The galactic markets crashed. Trade routes froze. Everyone was talking about the humans. Meanwhile, in the lower decks of the Val'kath Palace, a small group of scientists analyzed the human message. They replayed the transmission again and again, breaking down the words, the background, even the signal pattern. One young researcher gasped. "Look at this, the carrier wave. It's layered with hidden data." "Hidden data?" "Yes, it's not just a message. It's a scan of us." The others gathered around. The signal wasn't just audio. It contained readings of Val'kath technology, energy signatures, even their planetary defense network. "They were studying us while they spoke," the researcher whispered. "Every satellite, every system. They see everything." Kareth was informed the next morning. He listened quietly, then dismissed the team with a single order. "Destroy every copy of that signal. No one must know." But he couldn't sleep that night. He stood again by the window of his chamber, staring into the star-filled void. The humans were out there, unseen, unheard, and he knew they were watching. They didn't end us, he thought. They're waiting to see if we learn. He imagined them, vast fleets hidden beyond the dark, silent watchers of the galaxy. And for the first time he felt something stronger than fear. He felt respect. Maybe, he whispered to himself, they're not our enemies. Maybe they're what we could become, if we survive long enough to change. Far away on the UTS horizon, Captain Mira Solon received a confirmation report. "Transmission delivered, Captain." "Val'kath channels confirmed receipt," she nodded. "Good. Begin Phase 2. Her second officer looked uneasy. "Do you think they'll listen, ma'am?" She smiled faintly. "They will. Fear teaches faster than diplomacy." She turned to the viewport, watching the distant stars flicker like distant fires. "We showed them the edge of the storm," she said softly. "Now we see what kind of empire they want to be." The hum of the ship deepened as it prepared to jump back into the void. The scout fleet vanished once again. Silent, invisible, unstoppable, leaving behind only a whisper carried across the stars. From Saul, with warning. The galaxy had changed. Weeks after the message from Saul, the once proud Val'kath Empire stood silent. Their war fleets remained docked. Their factories, once alive with the sound of weapon building, now hummed quietly with repair drones. The streets were still lined with banners, not of victory, but of remembrance. and high in the royal spire, Prince Kareth watched the stars again. He had stopped wearing his ceremonial armor. The crown of his house now sat dusty on a stone pedestal beside him. A shadow passed across the twin moons. It was a small ship, sleek, black, and fast. No Val'kath design looked like that. Kareth turned toward the window. His heart raced. He didn't call the guards. He didn't sound an alarm. He already knew who it was. Minutes later, the ship landed silently on the palace balcony. Its hull shimmered like a reflection in water. A single figure stepped out, human, wearing a gray uniform with the golden sun of Saul on the shoulder. The visitor's face was calm, composed, but her eyes carried power, the kind that didn't need weapons to be felt. "Prince Kareth of Val'kath," she said softly. "Captain Mira Solon, we need to talk." Kareth stood still for a long moment, then nodded. "You came here without fear." Mira smiled faintly. "If I were afraid, I wouldn't be here." He gestured for her to follow. They walked through long marble halls lit by the fading light of twin suns. No guards followed. Kareth had ordered the corridors cleared hours before. When they reached the council chamber, Mira looked at the shattered hollow table. It was still scarred from the last meeting. "This is where your empire decided to attack us," she said quietly. "Yes," Kareth admitted. "And where it died." Mira placed a small black cube on the table. It glowed faintly with a pulsing blue light. "This," she said, "is a message from Saul Command. But it's not for your council. It's for you." Kareth stared at the device. "For me?" "You asked the right questions," she said. "You wondered why we didn't destroy you. Why we stopped." She pressed a button. The cube projected a hologram, not of war but of stars. Thousands of systems marked with golden lights, then lines of travel between them. A web of colonies, stations, and unknown sectors stretching far beyond known space. "These are human colonies," Mira explained. "Some new, some old. We grew quietly while your empires fought each other. We didn't claim worlds for power. We built them to survive." Kareth's eyes widened. "How many?" "Enough to make the galaxy listen," Mira said. "But that's not why I'm here." She looked directly at him. Her tone softened. "Saul Command wants peace, real peace. But we know fear fades. Empires forget, and one day someone else will test us again." Kareth frowned. "Then why not destroy us all now and be done with it?" Mira leaned forward, her voice calm but cutting. "Because humanity doesn't conquer the weak. We challenge the strong, and until they learn to stand beside us." The prince said nothing. He turned back to the window, watching the stars beyond. "You believe we can stand beside you? After what we did?" "I believe you can learn," she replied. Silence stretched between them. Then Kareth asked, "What happens if my people choose not to?" "Then Saul will return," Mira said simply. "And the next time it won't be scouts." Kareth closed his eyes. He could feel the truth in her words, not as a threat but as a promise. Later that night, as Mira prepared to leave, Kareth stopped her at the balcony. "Captain Solon," he said, "if I agree to peace and if I try to change, then how will I contact you?" Mira smiled faintly. She handed him a thin silver disc no larger than a coin. It shimmered with faint blue light. "When the time is right," she said, "you'll know how to use it." She stepped onto her ship, the engines humming softly. "One more question," Kareth said. "Why me?" She paused at the hatch. "Because every empire needs someone brave enough to doubt it." And with that, the ship lifted off, vanishing into the night sky without sound or flame, like a ghost returning to the void. Weeks passed. Across the empire, Kareth began quiet reforms. He dismantled old war councils. He opened communication with neighboring systems. He even sent unarmed ships into deep space, exploration vessels marked with a new symbol, the Val'kath star, encircled by the golden sun of Saul. His brother Varen called him a traitor. The nobles whispered of madness. But slowly the people began to believe again, and not in conquest, but in survival. Far across the galaxy, in the command room of the UTS Horizon, Captain Mira Solon watched a hologram of Kareth speaking to his people, declaring the end of the old war age. Her second officer looked at her. "Do you think he'll keep his promise, Captain?" Mira nodded slowly. "He's seen what waits beyond fear. That changes a person." The officer smiled. "And the others? The other empires watching all this?" Mira's eyes hardened. She turned to the massive star map. Hundreds of glowing points spreading across the void. They're watching too, she said. And they'll realize soon. The scouts weren't the danger. She tapped the map, zooming in on Saul, a bright golden star surrounded by countless signals. We were only the beginning. On Val'kath, as the twin suns rose again, Kareth stood at his balcony holding the silver disc. He turned it over in his hand. It glowed once, faintly, and then projected a small message in the air. The eyes of Saul are upon you. Prove we were right about you. He smiled faintly. Then I will, he whispered. The camera of fate pulled away. From the palace, from the planet, from the Empire, into the cold expanse of stars where new lights began to flicker one by one. Human ships, moving silently between the worlds. Each light carried the same emblem, a golden sun rising over the dark. The Soul Empire had not yet arrived, but its shadow already ruled the stars.